Hey. All right. So, week 40, book 40, Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon, published in 2006. I was going to say written in 2006, but we don't know that. There's a very good chance that he'd worked on this for quite some time. Okay. So, this is his longest book at 10,000, at 1,085 pages long. And it has taken me quite a while to get through. This is, I think, the second. It's possibly it's the second time I've read it because reading it is an incredible undertaking. And unlike some Pynchon novels, this one doesn't really seem to have much of a through line at all. Now, of course, this is a common theme in Pynchon's novels. Most of them don't seem to have a particularly satisfying through line, but this one even less so. What it's about, as much as about anything, is the period between 1893, when the Chicago Fair happened, through to um, about 2021, something like that, when 2021, 1921 or so, immediately after World War One. And in this period, what happens is quantum mechanics begins. Yay, quantum mechanics. But also, the automobile replaces the horse. Yay. And the telephone starts to spread. Yay. And modernism in art begins to spread. Yay. And so a lot of things of the old world start to become outdated. The frontier closes in the American West. And of course, the modern warfare that will culminate in World War One starts to begin and show up. Uh, and all of this uh, is combining as a way of ending kind of a more poetic, romantic era and entering into a more prosaic, flat, less magical era. And that's exactly what the book is about the end of this pre modern magic era. So that it one of the things we're looking at here is the nature of light. What is light? That becomes more of a concern and more of an issue. Is it a particle? Is it a wave? What is its nature? And this dual nature of light becomes something that, in the book anyway, is becomes a metaphor and mythologized by something called Icelandic spar. And Icelandic spar is this real crystal that splits light into two different beams. Now, this is just a random physical effect of this particular kind of rock, but in Pynchon's world, Pynchon's characters mythologize this into a way of looking under the surface of things. Because remember, this is also a period of the rise of the occult and the rise of pseudosciences like theosophy and telekinesis and the occult and all this, all the the Golden Dawn, all these kinds of secret societies and this sort of thing begin to appear as well. So photography has grown. Motion pictures are just beginning, and these both figure in here. You know, things like Dracula had been written, published in 1900. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is written about this time period. Jules Verne is writing his books and publishing them. Okay, and so all of these kinds of things are kind of working together. So part of it, one, the physics. You have characters who are concerned with things like the Riemann hypothesis. You have characters that are interested in Cantor's ideas of infinity and group theory and those kinds of things. Okay, and then you have um, engineering. You have people who are involved in the various kinds of modern engineering that's happening with Tesla and with Edison, more with Tesla, because Tesla is the path that wasn't taken, which of course is usually Pynchon's oeuvre, the thing that wasn't followed. And so, Tesla machines appear in various places, and of course, those big plasma balls and all that stuff. All that kind of stuff. Remember, the movie for the first Frankenstein movie is filmed not too long after this. So these are all the kinds of things that are part of this time period and figure in. Um, and so we have characters interested in the math and the engineering side of things. And there's two sides of the physics. There's the vectorists and the octogenar or the quadrinarians. Those people believe in 5 dimensions, and they're arguing against each other. One of them believes everything is vectors, everything is always a line going someplace, and most of the main characters here are vectorists, but there are some not quintarians, quadrarians. Quadrarians is believe in 4 dimensions, not five, four quad, and so they're there. And then H.G. Wells, The Time Machine. Well, we have a time machine that figures in one small part that it happens a decade or so before World War One, but has people seeing the battlefields of World War One and prefiguring that kind of tragedy is going to happen. And of course, the machines of war, the modern machines of war that are being developed, like the machine gun and the various missile launchers and anti-aircraft, and of course aircraft. All of that is involved as well um, in terms of the engineering side of things. Okay, so the science, the technology, the engineering. Another aspect of that is the Chums of Chance. Now, the Chums of Chance is more like a Jules Verne kind of adventure story for kids, where these kids go around the world in this hot air balloon having adventures. Yay, all nice and good, kitty. But Pynchon takes it and starts it as this very childish kind of kids going on this eternal adventure kind of thing, eternal kids, and this slowly grows and grows and grows until it becomes something very different from that. And these kids start to grow up. At the end of the book, they actually all get married and start having kids, and their chums of chance thing gets involved, and into politics and into the events of the day and things like this. Like one point, they go and look up the Sununga event, that was called, where 1905 or 1906, where something happened in Siberia, some meteor hit or something that exploded and knocked down trees for several, I think hundreds of miles around it, I'm not really sure, but a big event. That event happens in this book, and of course, many of the characters go and investigate this, unusual event, and they're theories, conspiracy theories mostly about why this happened. Um, all these characters are involved in kind of conspiratorial thinking about the great game, which is the control of India, of Pakistan, of inner Asia, all those kinds of places with their mineral wealth and with their oil and things like this. Now remember, oil was just becoming a resource people began to care about, and so there are some speculators in oil. Okay. Okay. So all of that is going on, prefiguring all the kinds of tensions and the liaisons and the alliances that are going to lead to World War One and to 20th century complexities. Okay. So Old West. 1893, the Great Chicago Fair happened, and that's part of sort of the coming of civilization to the second half of the United States between California and Chicago. There's not as much territory there, and what's going on inside that territory is gold mining, and when gold runs out, silver mining, and when silver mining runs out, coal mining, and although we don't really see it yet in the timeline here, after coal is going to come oil. Okay, so exploiting the natural resources. This is a direct continuation, in a way, from Mason and Dixon, where we see that line being drawn to the west, and even though it ends way over here, that whole stretch, you see at the very end of it, Mason Dixon looking out into the west and envisioning this line just going all the way to the mountains and to the sea beyond. And that's exactly what we see here. This is what we have here. 200 years later? 200 years later, I believe. About 200 years later. Okay, no, about 150 years later, maybe. In any case, this is what we have now, as we have um, the closing of the frontier. I think as Turner talked about this in 1897, I believe, is the frontier closed. And that's when, the railroads who had been doing exactly the same thing Mason-Dixon was doing, drawing lines, drew, drew a line all the way across. When the 500-year Indian War genocide finally comes to an end, and the last of the Native Americans are finally placed on reservations. Um, that also happened in this time period, and so that sort of whole Wild West is closing down. And so we have the end of that romantic closing down of the Old West happening. And we see this with a family, the Travers family, Webb Travers and his sons, Kit, Reef, and Frank, and his daughter Lake, and their opposition to the plutocrat Scarsdale Vibe, who owns the mine. Conflict happens because the anarchist Webb Travers, is going around blowing up stuff. Now, this period happens to have been a period when anarchists over the world were following Buchanan, Bukanin, Bukanin, Cannon, um, and they were going around assassinating or blowing up things. This is what happened to McKinley, who was um, killed by an anarchist. This is what happened to King Umberto, I think, of Italy. He was killed by an anarchist. And these anarchists have these kinds of anarchist networks. Okay. And they're opposed by things like the Pinkertons and detective agencies, which figure in this book as well. Pinkertons don't so much, but detective agencies do. Okay, and so these anarchists, most well known in this book, Webb Travers, goes around blowing up things with dynamite. Maybe he's some guy called the Killsgetter Kid, which I can't help but hear as referencing back to the Kenosha Kid and other things. That's in Gravity's Rainbow, Kenosha Kid, and other things in other books by Pynchon. So there's that going on. And Scarsdale gets upset at Webb, and so he hires Deuce Kindred and Sloat Fresno to go and take care of problem. And they go and they kill Webb. But this causes the problem of vengeance, which now there's a blood debt that Frank, Reef, and Kit feel that they owe. And they don't really try to track these people down, but Frank wanders around in the Old West and in Old Mexico. Now, now Mexico is about to go through a series of civil wars beginning about this time period, and Frank gets himself involved in those. And at one point, while he's wandering around, going from place to place, he wanders into a town, sees Sloat Fresno in a random cantina, and kills him. Deuce Kindred manages to survive. To the end of the book, no one can find him. But Deuce also marries Lake, Webb's daughter. And that leads to sort of a typical Pynchonian thing where there's a throuple between Sloat, uh, 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 Deuce, and Lake. And also, Deuce is going out sleeping with everything that moves at the same time. And it's like the definition of a toxic relationship. And they apparently stay together, and they get all the way to the end of the book in San Francisco, where Deuce eventually gets himself in trouble with the law for something totally unrelated, because he's just a bad guy altogether. But that's the main thing happens in the book with that family, is that death of Webb sort of scatters his family, and so Luke goes with Deuce, and mostly we don't see much about them. We see them move around a little bit in the Colorado area, and then towards the end of the book, like I said, we see them in San Francisco. What happened between, we basically just get like a 2 or 3 sentence summary. Kit and Reef, on the other hand, we see a lot of them. They both managed to go over to Europe. Now, Kit is a mathematical genius type that wants to go to Göttingen and study the new math. And Scarsdale Vibe, I guess, to keep his enemies close kind of approach, sends Kit over there on his dime. And so he does that, and he gets involved in all kinds of adventures. over there, and then Reef winds up going over there as well for totally different reasons, and helps dynamite out different railroad lines through the mountains and this kind of thing. And they both get involved with various women. Frank gets involved as well. He's, like I said, in New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, that whole area, and he has two on again, off again kind of relationships with a woman named Ren and a woman named Estrella or Stray, and neither one of them are very stable. And anyway, there's some family relationships. I think Reef has a kid. Kit has a kid with a woman named no. Reef has another kid. Sorry, not Kid. Reef has another kid with Yasmin. Yasmin, and a guy named Cyprian Latewood get involved in another throuple. That seems to be a common theme here, is this throupling kind of thing. I'm not really sure why. Thruple. Is it thruple or thruple? Thruple. I don't really know why, but that's a common theme here. And it's always two men and one woman, although definitely with Yashmin definitely has bisexual tendencies herself. She's the character, by the way, that's interested in the Riemann hypothesis, and that was her thing. But Yashmin is involved with an organization called TWIT, TWIT, and TWIT is kind of a prefiguration of the white visitation and that sort of thing in Gravity's Rainbow. This organizational part of the British government that is exploring extrasensory kinds of approaches and psychic things and whatever. And she gets involved in this, and it starts to fall apart for various reasons. I'm not really kind of sure what happens there, and she winds up going into Eastern Europe, and that's where she runs into Reef, and then eventually she winds up getting pregnant. And, no, her kid's cute. That's all I can say about that. Her kid's cute. So all kind of things happen over there. Um, and if you get the sense that there's sort of a looseness to this, there is. There isn't a strong plotting of what's going on here, except everything is beginning to come, uh, everything's beginning to get too close and also come apart at the same time. People start disappearing. Twit disappears. Some of these characters that Cyprian or Kit or Reef or Yasmin are connected to die or get killed or wander away to never be heard from again. That happens repeatedly, this kind of thing. And there you go. So, and in World War One, the interesting way that happens is the Chums of Chance go to a counter Earth, and they spend the majority of World War One on this counter Earth. And when they come back, the violence is all over. The war is over, and so we see this. Major war that you would think would make up a major part of this book as sort of almost a side note to what's really going on. Typical of Pynchon to take the most well-known event in the entire period and just cast it as a, oh yeah, that was going on too. Typical. Pynchon's going to do that. And anyway, so what's the point of this book? What does it mean to be against the day? What are we talking about here? Well, I think that this book is very much about just living. Living through periods, living through events, living through things. It's just about living. I don't think there is a tight plotting, because a tight plotting is an artificial structure. And I think Pynchon's is working with and against that artificial structure of a plot on purpose. I think that he has taken a lot of delightful genres and mixed them. So you get the Chums of Chance, the Jules Verne kind of approach. You get the Western. You get some kind of math adventures, kind of science adventure, something going on there. You get the time machine sort of thing going on. Did I mention time machines? I think I did. There's time machines, very briefly, but there are time machines. And you get, this focus on light and this sort of thing. Um, so you get just a taste of about every little thing going on. And I think it's just about living, just facing the day against the day. The night is where, the crazy things happen. And the day out in the light, that's where, science and rationality and this sort of thing. And this is, and that's also what this is about. It's about the shutting down of the frontier is the metaphor for the whole thing. That all of this mystery. All of this is going to shut down, shut down, shut down, and we're going to enter the statistical, mathical governmentality of post World War One, post World War Two. Because World War One is mentioned, World War Two, I think, is kind of alluded to in some various ways, like with Prussian blue, which is the foundation for Cyclone B. So this actually kind of relates a little bit to that the Boot book. When we cease to, what was it called? Um, when we cease to understand the world by Benjamin Labout. I think this has some connection to that in terms of what it's trying to do with some of the same kinds of ideas about the ways in which all of this is culminating in the gas attacks in World War One and the Prussian blue and the atomic bomb in World War Two, and you know all of this coming together, and the end of the mystery. Okay, so that's what we're going to say about Against the Day. See you next week.